Well, you can either do the work or pay the money. Today, we're talking gas.
That's propane versus wood.
That's right, wood and propane for your off-grid cabin, homestead, or tiny home lifestyle right here on Cabin Life.
Hello, welcome to our channel. We're all about sharing our adventures and experiences around our homestead and off-grid cabin here on our 40 acres in the wilderness of Ontario, Canada.
We enjoy life around the cabin, exploring, canoeing, hiking, campfire cooking, gardening, and sharing our love of nature.
If you haven't done so yet, consider subscribing and click the little notification bell so you won't miss anything right here on Cabin Life with Glenn and Maureen.
Hello, I'm Glenn.
I'm Maureen.
Let's compare two forms of off-grid fuel, wood versus propane, or LPG, liquid propane gas.
If you haven't seen our talk on 5 basic essentials to the off-grid lifestyle, check out this video here.
You know, over the years, we've used both wood and propane, and we're going to share some of our experiences with you of what we've learned along the way.
And 4 main factors come into play: time and labor versus cost and convenience.
If you have the time and the ability to do the labor, then you could save yourself a lot of cost. Whereas if you don't have the time or the ability, then you pretty much have to pay someone else to do the work for you. And often the more convenient something is, the more you have to pay for it.
Generally, the more convenient something is, the more it saves you time, but then it's going to cost you more for that convenience.
You'll have to decide for yourself what's best for your own circumstances. So watch the whole video because there's lots of points to ponder and tips to share.
It's common for homesteads and cabins to use both wood and propane, but there are occasions, like when someone's first starting out, they're forced into a choice of either one or the other.
And that's where those 4 factors come into play again: time, labor, cost, and convenience.
Whenever we're talking about propane and wood-burning appliances, we're referring to those that are installed by licensed and certified professionals. Always use CO2 and smoke detectors when you're using either wood or propane appliances.
That's a must. So, the pros and cons of propane and wood fuel, in no particular order. First of all, Maureen and I love the look of a wood fire. So, yay wood stove.
It's so cozy watching a beautiful fire, and it gives off such a nice heat.
But there's lots of work that goes into wood heat, and we're going to talk about that, and we'll talk about the cost that goes into the convenience of propane too. Wood is dry heat, propane is moist heat.
The great thing about propane is that with the flick of a thermostat switch, you can have instant and consistent heat. Yay, propane!
That's true, and with wood, the heat is either on or it's off. Once the firebox is loaded up, the fire burns until it's coals and ash. There's no turning it off once it's started.
Yeah, and propane is much more energy efficient, especially for the short-term needs, because you only use the fuel that you need at the time. Yay, propane!
With wood, we regularly loaded the firebox to maintain constant heat. We stoked the stove 3 times a day at 7 a.m., 3, and 11 p.m. to maintain a reasonably consistent indoor temperature.
And the flame looked so nice. There's a certain skill and finesse to lighting a wood stove. You know, he's a pro at it, but it took me quite a while to learn how to get the hang of it. Why don't you tell them about your bacon and egg story, Glenn?
The bacon and egg story. Yeah. We were young, in our mid-20s, as I recall, just rented a house that was on a secluded lake, beautiful place, great lake, and we had 2 wood stoves in that home, and that was our first time using wood stoves for our main heat. And so one morning, I think it was just the first of the snowfall, first of winter, and it was quite a snowfall, about 2 feet of snow overnight. And I went to cook bacon and eggs first thing in the morning on the wood stove, got it all fired up, started the bacon and eggs on the stove top, and I heard a roar coming up through the chimney, and I knew I had a chimney fire. So I rushed outside, I looked at the chimney, and sure enough, it was billowing smoke. Ran back inside, called the fire department, and they had said that it's a no-go. There's been a winter storm. There's no way we can get in there in that little laneway and down the trail to your place. So you'll just have to watch it and let it burn. Keep your eye on it. So I did that, and some snowmobilers came by from across the lake, saw the billowing smoke, and kind of figured it might be a chimney fire. So they came to check it out and just to make sure we were okay. And yeah, it burned itself out. That was that. We really learned a lesson that day. After that point, I studied wood burning. I did a lot of research on how to burn, how not to burn, all the different types of wood, and how to clean a chimney properly. And so we got the tools, we learned how to do it, and from that point on, we did it ourselves.
It was great knowing we could do it ourselves, and it gave us peace of mind. And from that time forward, we have never had a chimney fire.
That's right.
Yay, wood stove. Whereas with propane, maintenance and working with gas is best left to the licensed professionals.
Burr, you want to go in and get a coffee?
Sure, let's get a coffee.
All right. Oh, ooh, that's nicer in here. Not too bad. Well, propane is a nice clean heat, no mess inside or out. There's little, if any, effort involved, depending on whether you're hauling the tanks or having the fuel delivered. So, yay, propane.
Yeah, and the downside of propane is it's costly, and the price can fluctuate according to supply and demand in the world market. And you can't produce it yourself, so there's a dependence on the supplier. But it sure is convenient.
Yeah, and you pay for that convenience.
Yeah, you do.
So, now wood, that's a whole other story. In the past, we've had property where we were able to fell dead and standing hardwood to harvest enough wood for a year or two for our indoor heat. It sure felt like free wood too. So yay, wood stove.
Yeah, and that was for our main heat source, and that was a lot of work, eh? That was about 2 to 3 bush cord per season.
Yeah, the trees were felled, blocked into 16-inch lengths, and then we'd split and stack it. And then we'd let it season for a year or so, and man, that was hard on the back.
But the flames are so lovely. Yay, wood stove.
Eventually, we got a 2-year supply of wood ahead of time and stayed on top of that every year, splitting about 12 face cord of wood. Eventually, an injury developed in my hand, in my thumb. It's called trigger finger, and it was from the repeated impact of the axe chopping wood.
And as a result, we needed help in getting our wood in, so we bartered with someone who needed wood too and was willing to do the work for it.
They did the work, processing and splitting, and we got half of the wood. That was a win-win situation.
That sure was. And now that's something that you can't do with a propane company.
True enough. Hey, Maureen, you ever heard of sheekin wood?
What? Sheekin wood. I've heard of maple, pine, oak, spruce, but I've never heard of sheekin wood.
Sheekin wood. That's the wood that she can chop when hubby's away.
Yeah, right. Yay, propane. Now, if you don't want to do all that work splitting and stacking the firewood yourself because you don't have the time or the ability, then you pretty well have to pay someone else to do that work. Or switch to propane is also an option.
Yeah, that's that time, labor, cost, and convenience thing again. With wood burning, we were always about 1 or 2 years ahead, and there was comfort in knowing that we'd secured our heat for the next 2 years. So, yay, wood stove.
When it comes to the work of gathering the wood, it needs to be done months ahead. Ideally, about 2 years ahead of time, not in the season that's being burned.
And certainly not the same day that it's intended to be burned for fuel. You got to think ahead, like a squirrel, right? They gather nuts all summer and into the fall so they can have food supply all winter long.
Sure can.
Okay, let's talk environmental. Now, propane is a wonderful, efficient heat that you can set it and forget it. It saves hours and hours of labor and is cleaner burning than wood, and that's a real bonus. So, yay for propane. But propane is very expensive compared to wood harvested from your own land.
Yeah, another pro for propane heaters is that they generally have a smaller footprint compared to many wood stoves, which can be space hogs due to the required clearances. But there are exceptions, so do your research.
True enough. You know, when we moved from our previous home, we actually had to live in our van and an RV for a while. Check out this video right here if you want to hear that story. After living in the van and RV for a few months, experiencing some frosty nights with winter approaching, we built the off-grid cabin and installed a direct vent propane heater. So, yay propane.
Yeah, and you can see that installation right here.
Another pro for wood, wood fuel is a renewable, sustainable resource so that when the forest is properly managed, selective harvesting can actually help the environment and the ecosystem. So, yay wood stove.
However, improper burning of wood can release a lot of particulate into the smoke, resulting in creosote buildup inside the chimney when unseasoned wood is burned, which can cause a chimney fire. And having said that, burning wood properly in an efficient wood stove can have minimal negative effects on the environment, and it can be a safe heating source.
You know, it's recommended that propane heaters and appliances be vented directly outside because the byproducts of burning propane are water vapor, which can cause mold, and also CO2 gas, which can be deadly.
A CO2 detector is a must when burning propane or wood.
One of the cons for propane, did you know that for every 20 pounds of propane burned, there's about a gallon of water vapor that gets put into the air? So that's why we had that direct vent system put in.
Wow, no wonder why it was so damp in the RV when we used that Mr. Heater and the propane stove.
One thing about wood, it won't keep your beer cold.
No, but a propane fridge will.
Yay, propane.
With propane heat, you can dial down the heat and go away for a few days, but with a wood stove, you're tethered to stoking it up at least once a day. And wood can be messy indoors, with those wood splinters and chips, the dust, the mold, and the ash. Remember that? And the critters?
I know, but the flames look so pretty. Now, some people even consider splitting wood as therapeutic, which is great if you have the time and the ability to put in that labor. So there's that time, labor, and cost and convenience thing again.
Yeah, I know, but it's so romantic watching someone else splitting wood at their off-grid cabin.
Yeah, sure, until you have to do it.
Yep, wood gives you appreciation for the work and the effort in gathering the fuel.
Exactly, and if you have the time and the ability to harvest and stack the wood for yourself, it can be very rewarding and it can save a lot on heating costs. Yay, wood stove.
Like they say, wood warms you up twice. Once when it's split and stacked, and again when it's burned.
Yep. In general, harvesting your own firewood can result in a higher risk of injury because by its very nature, every step in processing wood comes with its own risk, whereas propane is pretty much risk-free. So yay, propane.
A real plus for propane is its versatility. You can run a lot of appliances with it. Your space heater, water heater, your cooking range, fridge, lanterns, barbecue, and even an outdoor kitchen.
Whereas wood is pretty much for heating and cooking only. You can get water heaters that attach to the wood stoves, but they've got limited capacity. Now, propane, that's available on demand. Wood, that's available on command.
Yeah, on command, as in, Glenn, I command you to go out and get some wood.
Now, something to keep in mind about propane, it's a volatile fuel. Even a small leak can be dangerous or even fatal. There's no natural odor to it, so they add rotten egg smell to the gas as a safety precaution.
And portable propane tanks should never be used or stored in your living space.
Lots of people do it, but a word of caution here. Our propane installer told us that propane boils and it expands inside of the tank. And at warm enough temperatures, the pressure valve could open and release gas into the air. So if you've got it inside, yeah.
Yeah, you don't want any open flame nearby when that happens.
You see, the problem with small propane tanks outside in the winter, it's that they're susceptible to the extreme cold. Like at minus 40 degrees Celsius, and the liquid propane, it might not boil, and the appliances feeding from it could shut down. And that's when there's an impulse to bring that cold tank into the warm living space. Don't do it.
No, and they say larger tanks are better for full-time use through the winter.
Yeah.
Hey, Glenn, I got a secret word for you. Here's a clue. An expert in agony.
Secret word, clue, expert in agony.
expert in agony.
Now, while Glenn's thinking about the secret word, what's your choice? The cozy wood fire or the convenience of propane? Leave your comments below.
Expert in agony. I know, genius, no, I know, propane.
Ding, 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 ding. Hey, high five. Congratulations. Good one. You know, I was all for the idea of the propane here in the cabin because of the limited space, but now that I know about how the cold reduces the efficiency of the fuel, I'm rethinking the value of wood because the propane sure is convenient, but each one has its own set of pros and cons. I do like the pretty flames though.
I've always liked the comfort of the wood fire too, but the work's really hard on the back. And wood fuel, it's the most labor-intensive fuel there is. But once you have your supply secured, it's a great feeling knowing that you can heat your space and cook with the same unit. Now, while I don't really like the idea of depending on propane, its convenience and versatility in different appliances makes it a valuable luxury, especially in an off-grid situation. So personally, for me, the main heat would be wood and backup propane.
Yeah, for sure. But for appliances, I would say propane over wood. For the cooking and the washing and the cleaning and the boiling of water and having hot water generally, propane.
Much of it comes down to that time versus labor versus cost versus convenience. Well, I'm sure we've missed some stuff, so let's hear your thoughts and comments.
Yes, and remember to subscribe and hit that notification bell.
Let's get on back out there to our stargazing, Maureen.
Sure.
All right, we'll see you next time, folks. I'm Glenn.
I'm Maureen.
Over and out.
Take care.
Coffees go with it.